Ottawa is looking at some kind of federal budget relief for Canada's hard-pressed manufacturers. That word today from the federal finance minister. Jim Flaherty made the announcement in his Whitby-Oshawa riding. That region has been hit very hard by production reductions at General Motors and other manufacturers. The minister says the lofty loonie and growing competition from imports are creating, quote, a perfect storm for the sector.
And he's not the only one looking for ways to help the manufacturing sector. A Hamilton councillor has spent this past week in the nation's capital lobbying the government to create a Southern Ontario Economic Diversification Fund. Terry Whitehead says such a fund would help offset the high-paying jobs the manufacturing sector has lost due to the turbulent economy. He joins us from our Ottawa studios and from the DeGroote School of Business at McMaster University. We have Nick Bontis. And Terry, I'll start with you. Why should taxpayers bail out big business?
Well, I don't see it as a bailout. I mean, you take a look at our competing nations. They have many of these programs in place. In fact, I have a sheet that reflects many states and cities in the United States and all the initiatives and programs they provide to subsidize or encourage investment in the manufacturing industry in those various states. And in Canada, and certainly there's two motions I put forward. One addresses a program that was created a number of years ago in a time where in Southern Ontario the manufacturing industry was robust, low unemployment, and they created programs like FedNor in Northern Ontario and a lot of the rural communities. They have COA in the Atlantic provinces, and they have the Western Diversification Fund in the Western provinces, as well as topped-up programs in Quebec. The reality is that those programs have not been reviewed over a number of years. And when you take a look at, for example, what's happening in Alberta and the fact that they could still tap into that particular program, I think it's time to at least review the program, and then you look at the lost jobs. 150 jobs lost a day in the manufacturing sector in Southern Ontario since 2005. It's time that we look at instituting a program in Southern Ontario that's been missed in the context of this program that allows communities such as Hamilton to apply and create another tool in the toolbox to diversify our economy.
Okay, Nick, I know you're chomping at the bit on this one. You don't agree that such a fund would work?
You know, the principle of the fund will work, but I'm just philosophically, I'm not for handouts. I mean, there's a reason why we're losing jobs, and that's because we're not as productive as the competition. I don't think it has anything to do with the Canadian dollar and the perfect storm. The only thing that really has happened, which is unorthodox, is that the Canadian dollar has risen 18% in a very, very short period of time. And it took a long time for the manufacturers, and in many cases, many of them haven't even adjusted yet. So to protect ourselves from that rapid movement, I do agree with that. But to start giving handouts to one sector, it's a slippery slope, because why not give a handout to another sector that's been hit? For example, Canadian Tire may have lost business because of cross-border shopping to Buffalo. Once you start giving handouts, a whole bunch of people start putting their hands up and saying, I want money too, Ottawa, and I'm nervous about that.
But, I mean, what Terry is proposing is to really rethink or at least re-examine some of the existing programs. Is that correct, Terry?
That's correct.
And Nick, that sounds fair. I mean, why would we be continuing a program that exists out west when their economy is so strong?
It sounds fair, except that we're treating the sector as one category. Let me give you an example. You look at all the employees in Ontario that work for auto manufacturers. Well, we were talking about Oshawa earlier. Oshawa has GM, but GM is an American parent-owned organization that employs a lot of Canadians. So we're in effect giving money to another American company, even though we want to support jobs for Ontarians. That's where it gets a little bit complicated for me. If it was a manufacturing company that was 100% wholly owned by Canadians, I would be all for that 100%. I'm getting nervous now that we're doing this to help out our American counterparts.
Nick, I can't think of any Canadian company that strictly manufactures automobiles, for example. I mean, what are you suggesting here? That somebody come up with a great idea that we come up with our own company here?
No, I'm not suggesting that. Obviously, the largest employers of Ontarians happen to be U.S. multinational subsidiaries. That's what makes this problematic, in my opinion. I would rather us be very, very careful in supporting our homegrown businesses. That's what I'm concentrating on.
Terry?
Okay. Well, I mean, I certainly support that, but these programs are initiatives that are tapped in by municipalities and giving them an opportunity, another tool in the toolbox, to either diversify their economy or stabilize the economy within their municipalities. This is not about subsidizing companies or corporations, so I'm not exactly sure where that's coming from. The whole principle and the spirit of these programs was to assist regions that were in distress.
Well, how would, give me an example of how it would work in Southern Ontario. How would a municipality take advantage of such a fund?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking about what happened with the steel industry recently in Hamilton, and they were looking, in the context of a vehicle to assist Stelco. And it's my understanding that it was very difficult, the absence of having a program in Southern Ontario, to find that vehicle. So that was one that was directly government driven, and then looking at providing a program that can create some stability in a manufacturing sector that is so important to the city of Hamilton.
Nick, let's go back to the car industry here. We have had layoffs in Windsor, Chrysler Corporation, St. Catharines, Oshawa now. What about companies like Honda, which is also a multinational corporation, but in Alliston they're doing very well, building lots of Hondas. Honda's making money. What would the people at Honda or Toyota say about this type of let's call it a bailout?
Yeah, that's exactly my point, and I was going to add Toyota to the list, and many future perhaps Asian manufacturers that might come here in Ontario. And again, I have to reiterate back to my original point: productivity. Why is it that these Asian companies are coming in using the same types of Ontario employees versus the American counterpart multinationals that aren't as productive? That's problematic for me. That's not an issue for government. That's an issue for management.
But you're just talking about the auto sector. There are other manufacturing. Sure. There are other sectors within the manufacturing sector itself.
Yeah. There are other sectors, but that's the point that I'm trying to make. Every single organization has an ability to be as productive and as competitive as possible. Some of them are on the high end, and some of them are on the low end. That's just the nature of business.
But if we don't do something, we could start losing. And I mean, I can't imagine having all of the high-paying jobs disappear from the Southern Ontario economy. The ripple effect would be devastating on everybody.
Let me stress here, I don't want to bankrupt the province either. That's not my intent here. All I was trying to mention is that it's a very slippery slope. I'm nervous because handouts tend to go to individuals who have the pain point now. And the problem is, the business cycle is going to recover. We don't know what's going to happen to the Canadian dollar. Maybe it will go back down to 80 cents in the next 2 years, just like it rose so quickly. And then what's going to happen? All the support that we gave one particular sector because of the dollar now all of a sudden doesn't need it anymore. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to come back and they're going to say, hey, do you remember when you guys gave money for the manufacturing sector? Well, now I'm in the retail sector. I'm in the healthcare sector. Or frankly, I'm in the university sector. All other sectors are going to be looking at this deal very, very carefully because they're going to wait for their line in turn.
Well, let me make it clear that what I certainly propose isn't certainly addressed to one sector. It's addressed to the economy.
Right.
And you take a look at the city of Hamilton, for example, who was quite reliant on the manufacturing industry for many years. It's we're moving into a transition period and moving into a different economy. And these kinds of programs assist communities to get there, and that's why it's called diversification. Right. So we're really focusing on the manufacturing sector, and it certainly is important. It's $2.1 billion it provides to our economy, but the issue is not just manufacturing; it's the whole export industry, and how we address diversifying our economies within our communities.
Okay, gentlemen, excellent points on both sides. Terry Whitehead, Nick Bontis, thanks for joining us. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.